Hello, welcome. We are Obscure Reference today. This is a special little episode of Fingering the Pulse. I am Patrick, and to my that side,
Above me. No, below me. You're below me. I'm above you. I have you halved on my screen so I can have
oh,
my page on the other side.
I'm pointing on stream. You're like whatever that direction is.
Oh. Hmm.
Looks like it's to my left, but I'm pointing to my right. So I mean, you know what it is. It's Austin.
It's to my right for sure.
Yeah, cameras are weird. Well, not much else to say about that. Um, we saw a movie over the weekend. Maybe you've heard of it. You're right. It was the only
We've talked about
blockbuster
it on FTP.
at least twice. It's the biggest blockbuster this last weekend. It is, of course, Saw 10. Just kidding. It is the creator. It is Gareth Edwards' newest joint, starring what's his name? John David
John David
Washington.
Washington.
I knew it. I always forget. I always forget. I got it this time. And Gemma Chan, God bless. And of course, Ken Watanabe. And I didn't know it, but Allison Janney, also in this movie. And now that I saw that,
Sturgill Simpson,
yeah, it's Sturgill
which
Simpson.
is, again, still wild.
Who's Sturgill Simpson?
He's a country artist.
Who is he in the movie?
Oh, he's the guy that gets beat up in the beginning and then the Marine that gets beat up in the beginning and then
Oh,
shows up later.
yeah, the guy that helped him out. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah. He was just conveniently there.
that's really convenient. Anyway, we'll get to it. We're gonna give our general thoughts. Can we do general thoughts without giving spoilers, or do you just want to jump into spoilers?
No, I can give my general thoughts without spoiling for sure.
I know we just talked about Sturgill Johnson, but like we can forget we didn't say that. We didn't say that.
It's not really that important,
And
honestly,
you
like
know,
of a point to the
yeah,
movie.
yeah. True. So let's give our general thoughts right now, and then we can jump into spoilers after that. So yeah, you
Yeah.
wanna
I
start?
yeah, I think the world was far more interesting than the story that they were telling in this movie. I think that they tried to market it like it was smarter than it was, where this movie didn't really ask you any questions or really ask you to ponder anything. It just kind of exactly when you needed the information, it told you one scene prior so that you could follow the story and you knew kind of exactly where it was going to go. And it was a beautiful movie, like truly like incredibly shot. I was like kind of astounded the whole time how well they blended the CGI and like the forest and all of that. It was really good, and the action really solid. It all felt for being sci-fi and like supposed to be in the future, very real and very kind of like visceral. And it that was kind of the highlights of it. The story itself pretty straightforward, a lot of contrivances to get you to the points that they wanted to talk about, and it never really challenged any ideas, and frankly skipped a bunch of ideas that it could have explored right in front of its face that would have worked so well in this world. That it was a fine movie, but I think it's kind of a waste of how good of a world that it's in.
Yeah, I largely agree with that. Went into a later showing with some pals. We walked out of it all saying that we really liked it. I've cooled off a little bit on it, a bit more since then. I think it is just a solid, fine movie. Um, when I look for a good sci-fi story anywhere, really, not just a movie, I look for like a well thought out and developed world, and I think we have that here. I think it introduces some really interesting concepts. But kind of what Austin was alluding to, I don't think it makes you sit there and think. It is fairly straightforward. Whereas I read, Fahrenheit 451, or I watch either the Blade Runners or Dune, it's like, well, I'm thinking about that for a little bit longer. Like there's thought provoking stuff there, and there's some clear stuff that they talk about here. I don't want to get into it too much. I think it was in the trailers where they say, "Is there a heaven?" Like the little kid robot says that, So I'm not going to count that as a spoiler, but
I don't think it really explores the idea all that much, though, is
right.
the only thing.
And that's kind of what I was getting towards is that for such a heady concept like that, there's a lot of concepts they could have tackled, they could have talked about, and then they don't really. And that's,
Yeah.
it felt like this was going to be more than just a sci-fi action movie, and that's kind of what it turns into towards the end. So it didn't.
It's weird that they
Mhm.
marketed it that way. That's the thing. Is like
Yeah,
there's plenty of action sci-fi movies that are good.
yeah,
Like Oblivion, although it comes from a book that's headier than the movie, but
right.
uh like the movie itself is like a fun sci-fi action movie that doesn't have like, a whole lot to it. And if you market it that way, then going into it. I felt mostly disappointed in parts because they kind of portrayed it one way and then it was another thing.
Mm,
Like it was really m- large parts of the movie were about romance in a way that are not explored at all in the trailers. And like
mm.
not in a way that it's like, oh, they're hiding something, important. They just kind of wanted to market it a certain way and that didn't fit into that.
Yeah, they were definitely presenting it as like a high, like a big budget, like sci-fi quintessential movie that we'll be talking about for like years after. And we'll be talking about it, I'm sure, but like maybe not as much as they want us to. Because like I agree, I think there's a lot of really cool concepts. I think visually this movie was stunning. Um, I love a lot of the robot designs. I love a lot of the set designs. I think there's some really cool ideas here. It's just I don't think it gives me much more than that, you know. But yeah, do we want to?
Yeah, that's why I think why why put that meme out there as a response about with the Spider-Man Elysium and the creator, because Elysium's kind of the same idea where it's like rather than in this it's kind of like a human AI centered conflict. Elysium's about the rich versus the poor in a
Mm-hmm,
sci-fi world,
mm-hmm.
and it explores that idea in so much as it tells you what exactly it wants you to think based on the story. And it's very much like uh, the rich hoarding and the poor like being harmed because of it. And I think this kind of has a similar idea where it's like it explores the idea of prejudice, but in a way that it's like you can only think of it as the exact way that they want you
That they
to think of
present
it.
it.
They're not actually asking a question
Mm-hmm.
or presenting both sides. There's really just one side that's good and one side that's bad.
Yeah, and it's pretty cut and dry, really. They even have you start and like, hey, this guy's with this faction, and he slowly works his way over towards the other side. It's like one of those kind of stories. Um, and that's just something you pretty much pick up on right away when you start the movie. But like, it's not at all like, well, there's benefits to either side. It's pretty black and white. Like, these. I don't want to get into it. I feel like we're toeing the line a little bit with spoiling stuff. Do you want to just jump into that?
Yeah, sure. Overall, I think that what did Maddie say? The Metacritic was like 67 or something like that. It's fairly straight. I think that's pretty head on.
Yeah,
It's a pretty average movie. You definitely should see it. It's good, but
see it on a
not
big
going to blow you
screen.
away.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to see it on a big screen. I think you should because
I
it's
would though. It is really beautiful. It is a beautiful movie, like
yeah.
without a doubt.
I
You
did
will not feel sad having like
yeah,
seen those visuals on a big screen.
and it's not too long. It's just a little over 2 hours, which I guess is a little long, but like it didn't. I
But it
guess
felt like it should have been like 2:45 the way it was cut.
honestly, yeah, the pacing was not good. That was something I came out of the movie thinking immediately. I'm like, man, I'm checking my watch like every 20 minutes. Like, what is happening here? But that was a
The
problem.
amount of times that there was like a montage that just like came up randomly
Hmm.
right in the middle of like a story beat, I'm like, oh, we're just like
We're just
into
doing
this
that.
now.
Yeah. No, but I agree. I think when I went into this, I think I saw the Rotten Tomatoes score around 80 something, and I think it's since gone down to like 60 something around what the Metacritic might be. And yeah, I more or less agree with that. I think I've since cooling off on it, yeah, I'd probably say I'm around there as well. Definitely worth watching at least once. Will you go back to it? Well, your mileage will vary, I think.
Sure.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we'll just jump into spoilers now, I guess. I don't know. If you're concerned
Go for
about
it.
the creator spoilers, get out of here. Leave.
See it first. Come back. Listen to us
Evergreen.
dissect it.
Yes. In the way only we can. Poorly.
Very haphazardly.
Yes. With the grace of a butcher's knife. That's supposed to be a butcher's knife. It didn't play well.
Mm.
Um,
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
I was gonna say I like most of the I like a couple of the performances in this movie.
The kid was incredible. I don't know what his name was or her name was, but
I don't either. I think this might be like her first movie, but yeah, I think
it was incredible.
the bit towards the end where she's seeing all the people run towards the falling nomad, which like I would never do in a million years. That seems extremely dangerous. But she's like laughing, crying, kind of.
I was getting so much Joker vibes from that, and I couldn't handle it.
Yeah, that's totally valid. I can see that. But like that felt a little, I don't know, like it was good. I don't know. I felt a little like I don't know what I'm supposed to be feeling by watching her make these emotions. But other than that, she was very solid the entire movie.
Well, I still didn't think like it doesn't come together because I, I look for as much as it is good versus evil. There's not like it's not so like the Americans are not so bad that you're like happy that
Mm-hmm.
Nomad doesn't exist anymore because they never like all right, we need to take a step back.
All right,
Let's not start at the end.
step
Let's
back.
start at the beginning. I think there are some structural problems with this movie that um, cause issues. I think that had they decided instead of spoon feeding the backstory of him and Nirmata the whole time, if they had just done like a 30-minute short at the beginning of the movie that built their entire relationship and then broke it down, and then we had to build back up to the end,
Mm-hmm.
it would have worked a lot better because it felt like you had no understanding for the history or context of what was going on, and that spreads out even farther into the like central conflict. Like there's a one liner about the it being human error that caused the nuke on LA.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's like the crux of you're supposed to be on the side of the AI and not on the side of the Americans. Because outside of that, right, like obviously the Americans just bombing a bunch of people is not great. But if it's an existential threat, like they portray AI to be on the American side, then you can there's a world in which you can understand like why you would need to do that. But so then when the other side of it is just a one liner, it doesn't exactly like make me super strongly feel for the other side.
Mm-hmm.
I really only felt anything for the AI side because of the performances. The performances were really good, and that instilled some like emotional buy-in, but the story didn't really back it in any way that really worked for me.
Yeah. I'll double up on that and saying that like it doesn't help that there's a good portion of the movie where our main characters are running away from AI policemen. Uh, like I know I'm supposed to feel bad for these guys by the end of this movie, and that's kind of what they kind of force down your throat, and that's fine if that's what you're going for. But like, it could have been done probably a little bit more gracefully. We could have spent a little bit more time in the weeds with them, and we spent a little bit of time with Ken Watanabe at like their first base before that gets utterly destroyed with the running Gonkotroid bomb things that were awesome. Shout out to
Yeah.
those. But like, I don't think it was enough time to show like, hey, these guys are really suffering because U.S. has a giant floating spaceship that can destroy them in an instant, pretty much. So I feel like we could have done a little bit more to ingratiate ourselves to the AI side of things. So I agree. I
Well,
don't think I was fully there.
and I think that this kind of builds into the part where I was talking about there's a lot of concepts in this world that they
Mm-hmm.
decided not to question or explore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of parallels that you could draw in this context of this world to Iraq, America's foreign policy decisions, like trying to rule the world as like the most wealthy country, and even like some military industrial complex stuff that if you
Mm-hmm.
even like explored that a bit gives you some context to be understanding of why you would be against the American position here, because really, there's like, so we get context for the woman, I wish I can't remember her name, the like general lady, of why she's in on this.
Yeah.
So she's not like some like super evil person. The military general never does anything that's like sinister. He just kind of like obeys the law, like just
Mm-hmm.
does what you expect a military officer to do in this scenario. So like the two titular bad guys don't ever like reach a point where you're like, fuck them. And then like the
Yeah.
context of their side is never explored to any level to really have any strong opinion on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Because like yeah, the military general guy, I don't even remember his name. That's how much of an impact he had on me. He just kind of a meathead, and I think it was a
With a
good
deep voice, like a weirdly deep voice.
yeah, like you know,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. I thought it was a good choice to limit it down to just those two because the rest of the military squad I didn't give a shit about. They all got murked pretty quickly, and I thought that was a cool choice. Um, frick, I don't know. I think, man, I don't know. There's that's I don't know because it feels like it should be a gray issue. Um, which side is
Yeah.
right, but like it isn't.
Well, especially like 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 you can understand, right? If I give you like a 1,000 foot view of this story and I say in 2100 AI dropped a nuke on Los Angeles and it said it killed 1 million people, which is an absurd concept. If you've ever been to LA and you dropped a nuke on it, you're going to kill 10 million people, not 1 million, but whatever.
Yeah.
That's just like a small whatever. So, sidetracking myself there. It kills 1 million people. And so the US bans AI and decides to start a war to save the human race. You can understand a context why Americans would feel that way and why they would have
Hmm.
to do that thing.
Sure.
And then you add the context of, the AI doesn't want to kill humans, they just want to coexist. Okay, now I can see both sides. So, like, from 1,000 foot view, you're like, okay, this could be an interesting conversation about prejudice and like preconceptions and all whatever like you want it to really be about when it comes out. It's such a fruitful like idea that you could play with, and then they just end up not exploring it in any way
Hmm.
that's meaningful and ultimately hurts the story. And even like let's say there was some more of that side of it, I still don't know how great of a movie it could be because of the fact that the movie really decided there were certain things it wanted to do and then just
Hmm.
found a way to weave to that point.
Yeah.
And so like for example, they needed a way to find Nirmata. So then one scene before they developed this idea that there's the ring with the tracker in it. And then they fall in the next scene, they follow the ring.
Hmm.
And then they wanted to have a scene where the main character had to kill his wife, and so they made it so no one in all of that town is able to kill her, so she just had to sit there in a coma for 5 years
Yeah.
until he got there, and then he could kill her. So like, and then the guy, right, the first Marine that we talked about, Sturgill Simpson, he gets beat to a pulp in Eurasia trying to fight a war against AI. But then after all of that, he decides to stay in Eurasia, seemingly marry a a simulant,
Hmm.
and then it just happens to be exactly where our main character needs him, seemingly against all context to his character. So like
Yeah.
they really just wanted certain things to happen and just made it happen, and it causes the story to just not feel organic. It feels designed and
Hmm.
not well designed. It feels like I want this thing to happen, so here I'm going to build the context one scene beforehand.
Yeah. For sure. I see John in the
And
chat,
then it was
but if he really wanted
it
to give his
was
thoughts, he
cut
should
a,
have joined us.
cut up by
Oh,
some good action.
yeah.
But and that the scene with the Batman deep or meme deep voice. Yes,
I'm back.
agreed.
He's back.
Um that whole thing where they could like take their brain and put it into a simulant
Mm-hmm.
was a very cool concept
Yeah.
that they used in like
They
the
used
most
twice.
straightforward
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
They used it in the way that you knew was going to happen from the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
His wife's dead. So you knew that there was going to be this she comes back at the end
It made me
piece.
question because as soon as I knew they were building up to that, I'm like, well, she's been brain dead for a few years. Is that really gonna work? Like, what's the
But she was
science here?
alive.
I mean, she was
Yeah,
alive,
Luna
but like, I
Luna
don't know.
it was a good idea. It was a good world, but it wasn't executed. It left
Yeah.
so much to be desired. You're in a world where like there's so many great ideas that you could explore and they just didn't. They chose a story that didn't allow them to
Mm-hmm.
because they really wanted a story about a, an odd family in an AI world,
Kinda,
but
yeah.
also we never see them together. So like you
No,
can't really I don't know.
the one scene we do see them all together, she's lying in comatose on a hospital table, and it's like, it's like I would have liked to see maybe them all happy together to me to feel something, you know.
And that's why I think if they had done like a build up in the beginning that's a short story of their relationship, it would have instilled an emotional heart to this through line of
Mm-hmm.
their relationship, which is what this is really built on, in a way that the movie doesn't.
Yeah.
It feels like almost like they thought about a bunch of things that they wanted to do and then couldn't nail in
Mm-hmm.
on necessarily one thing because it somehow wants to explore so many things but is also super shallow but also is not like making you question things so you're like how did they build this,
Mm-hmm.
how is it both super shallow 2 hours long so long enough to like really um dig into something but then also not exploring such a large number of concepts to make an understanding of why it's so shallow.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a conundrum to me
A little bit,
now that I'm
yeah.
just sitting here thinking of like how they even got to that point.
I think a lot of it was like it's trying to do 50 different things. Like it is trying to have those deep conversations, but not committing to that. It's trying to be a good sci-fi action movie, which it achieves to an extent, but like it doesn't commit fully to that. You get bits of like, you watch this movie and if you've seen any like sci-fi war movie or anything like that, like you get vibes of that here. Like there's a little bit of Apocalypse Now. There's definitely a little bit of Blade Runner, Elysium, like Austin mentioned, like Terminator. Even there's a million different like I don't want to say references, but like you can tell this movie was inspired by like all the classic sci-fi movies that we all know and love, except
He clearly is a sci-fi fan, which I mean
right,
you could tell.
which
He
makes
did Rogue
sense.
One, right?
He did
And he
Godzilla,
did
yeah.
Godzilla. So like he clearly is a genre film guy.
Mm-hmm.
He clearly knows what he's doing. He clearly can direct. I mean, it's a
Yes,
beautifully like shot movie. It's
absolutely.
not put together like it's not edited great because like we were saying, there's so many montages that just like show up
Mm-hmm.
randomly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah,
And so like
yeah. Inspirations. Yep.
yeah, I like Gareth Edwards and I think this is just not his best work. It's good. It's just not
It is good.
it's not up to the level. I'm looking
Okay,
at
but yeah,
Gareth
I mean, all
Edwards'
in all,
wiki, and there's a quote in here that
Wait,
literally says, "Star Wars is definitely the reason that I wanted to become a filmmaker."
it shows. It shows in this film very specifically.
Yeah. All
I
right, John,
gotta I
give us
gotta
your
jump in
thoughts
real
coming
quick.
in here.
Solid like B minus movie. I agree with most of what you guys are saying. It's entertaining, like scene to scene. Austin's not wrong where they just kind of invented what gets us to the next scene at the end of the previous scene.
Yeah.
But like
Mm-hmm.
generally, it flowed well. The sets were well designed, like you guys said, well directed, well shot. But yeah, they really dropped the ball in terms of plot. I mean, it was uninteresting. There were just so many missed marks on. They really could have worked up, like Austin said, the beautiful world. They had the AI going on. We just kind of accepted they exist and never really got to discuss that at all. Um,
It's crazy that you nailed it, John, when we watched that trailer, where like when the first trailer happened, right? You, me and Patrick were on one side saying to you
Yeah.
like, "Hey, we think this is going to be like a movie that's
Yep.
exploring an idea
Hmm.
of like, they're clearly trying to build it in this way, like it's an idea about man and God and what how
And
AI
to
fits
be
that."
clear, that is a great idea for a movie. That is. I
Right.
would have loved
Yeah.
that movie.
And then somehow you nailed it in like, even though they were trying to market it to us in a way, you kind of saw through it, I guess, in a way.
Man, it looked
kind
like
of
an
came off
action
like
movie
an
from
action
day
sci-fi
one.
movie to you.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I was so disappointed when they dropped the ball because I was ready to be proven wrong. That other movie where it's like, what is an AI? Are they different than human? Yada, yada, yada. But honestly, Planet of the Apes just did it better. Like, they really made me think, are humans different than chimps? This movie, I was like, no, humans are exactly the same as the AI in this world, and there's no debate to be had.
Yeah. The second of the new Planet of the Apes movies is a 10 out of 10 movie for me. So
Absolutely.
100%.
I
That
agree
was
with
really
that.
good. That's the best one, like, for sure.
yeah.
Is real
But yeah,
quick.
I don't regret seeing this. No, a couple of things I have an issue with. One, they're supposed to be like the AI or real people too, right? But they're raising this little girl who is confirmed later in the movie to be innocent and doesn't know she's a weapon. They have her just locked in a black steel metal room with nothing but a single TV and a pile of toys, and that's an appropriate environment to raise a child in. Like, what the fuck? No, they
She
made
was-
That's
such
where
a big
concept
deal.
beats story again.
It says
Right.
the streams
Because she
ended.
isn't ultimately that big of a weapon. Like she's essentially a human
Now,
EMP.
we're back. Weird.
Yeah.
So like it's not like she was some crazy weapon that like, she could really ruin the world. She literally just can be an EMP.
They were
Like,
only
nothing-
worried
Yeah.
about her
But-
taking down Nomad with her powers, you know?
Yeah, it
No,
wasn't
I'm
like
not saying she
anything crazy.
wasn't like the argument of being a weapon aside, she was supposed to be a real child on top of it, and they had her in just the worst environment to raise a child in. Just an
Yeah.
isolated, dark room.
She came out,
and then
she
at
seemed to
the
be
fucking
fine.
end. Okay. The spaceship to the moon, I get it. That's something that'll exist in a couple hundred years, maybe, and it's just like an airplane to space. Okay. But instead of life vests, they have fucking spacesuits to just hand out to everyone on the plane. Do you have any idea how much those cost to make? And then not only did they make enough spacesuits for everybody, but they only give you 10 minutes of oxygen. Like, what is supposed to rescue you in those 10 minutes? I had a big issue with that at the end.
Did they say 10 minutes? I didn't catch 10 minutes. I mean, his
It,
suit doesn't
like-
last long, so you're not wrong.
They
you know?
set the timer on the bomb. Like, it's really, even if it's 12, 13 minutes, like,
That's still
it's
not
just an
enough time.
absurd. Yeah, it's nothing.
Yeah.
Like, I can
and then
believe
they
that they have
really-
enough
for
space
as
to see about
much-
it.
Sorry, I'm trying to catch up on my thoughts. For
Gotcha,
as
gotcha.
much as they laid into the romantic aspect of him and his wife, they're reuniting at the end. I didn't feel
Oh,
anything,
God.
and I thought it was
I
actually
didn't either.
stupid. Like, not
I
only
didn't
did
feel
I not
anything.
care, the last thing she
Why are there
remembers
crops
of him.
on a military outpost?
Oh, fun fact about that. Christopher Nolan planted those and he sold them for a profit afterwards.
That's cool.
Yes.
I brought it back to Interstellar. Let's go.
No, but like,
Um,
why? Like, the only reason those crops are there is so they can be like, look at this beautiful moment where they're frolicking through a meadow.
It's 100%
For
so
real,
it looks pretty. Yeah.
Yeah. But the last thing she remembers of him is finding out he's an undercover agent that betrays them, and then she sails away, gets blown up, ends up in a coma, sees him unaware of what the hell's happened, and just is
Oh my God.
fine and loves him again.
Heck yeah, you're
Yeah.
still here. Let's go.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
it's
It
just-
doesn't come together. At any point, the story doesn't like cohesively
Yeah.
make sense in a
Oh,
lot of ways.
Not at all, ever.
Shout out to Ralph
But yeah.
Ineson. Oh, sorry. Finish up. Sorry.
I like raw venison.
Ralph Ineson, voice of Sid in the latest Final Fantasy game. Didn't know he was in this movie.
Yeah, I don't regret seeing this movie, but it wasn't as good as I was hoping,
Mhm.
and I definitely don't intend to watch it twice.
Maybe in like 15 years, you know?
Yeah,
I'll
like,
definitely
I'm not
watch it
opposed, but I'm never gonna seek it out. It was
Not
a fun
super,
action
but-
movie,
Right.
but I
Yeah.
wanted an AI movie. Like Ex
I
Machina.
wanted a little
Ex
bit
Machina
more.
is so good.
What about
I
AI?
guess the problem,
Problem is,
if I want a movie like this, I will just watch Elysium because it's more interesting. Like, it's got better action than this movie, and it fits right into the same like vein. So like, I'd probably just watch that or like Oblivion.
It's
I
so
also-
Austin, I think that was the single fastest I've ever heard any human being utter words out of their mouth. Like you were just spitting them out.
you should
like-
hear Eminem on Rap God.
I was seriously gonna say, let's put that over Rap God. Like they were just flying out of your mouth.
I think I now am gonna denote Gareth Edwards as like baby Matt Reeves. He's like
It's
he's a
official.
genre
He's baby Matt
film
Reeves.
guy, but he kind of looks like Matt Reeves too. He's got the like kind of
What does Matt
disheveled
Reeves look
look, white boy
Yeah,
look,
yeah.
but
White
he
boy's
just
gotta
doesn't
shout.
execute on the
Woo!
same level.
No,
Definitely see this movie though.
Look,
I like
Absolutely.
Gareth
Creator,
Edwards.
worth a
I want him
watch.
to
Definitely
continue
not a
making
bad
movies.
movie. It just, definitely expect a more action sci-fi movie than an in-depth discussion movie. But yeah, it was enjoyable. Again, very well shot, beautiful angles, great sets, designs, acting, all that.
Go see it. It's I hesitate calling it good original sci-fi. It is good sci-fi. I don't know if it's all completely original,
Original's
but
probably not, yeah.
yeah, a lot of inspirations in this one for sure. But it is, you know,
The
an
Force
orig-
Awakens esque.
a little bit, yeah. But it is sci-fi being given the center stage from 20th Century Studios, and I think that we don't get enough of those as much as we should. Like it's a
Big
new
facts.
property, and I keep looking at the box office. It only made like 30. It's only got 32.3 million on a budget of 80 million, so that's not great. And I really want this to succeed, so we get more projects like this. I don't want a sequel to this. I want more projects like this. Let me be clear. Let me be clear.